The Marine Corps' Mountain Warfare Training Center in Bridgeport, California, was hosting an unprecedented long-range shooting competition. Snipers from every branch of the military had gathered to test their skills at extreme distances, with targets set at increments from 1,000 to 4,000 meters. The prize wasn't just bragging rights. It was a chance to help develop new training protocols and equipment for the next generation of military marksmen. Among the competitors were the military's absolute elite, men and women with confirmed kills at distances that most people couldn't even comprehend, shooting rifles that cost more than luxury cars. Then there was Frank Morrison. At 73 years old, he arrived at the registration table with a rifle case that immediately drew attention for all the wrong reasons. When he opened it, the laughter started. His rifle was painted bright orange, not the tactical black or earth tones of military hardware, but hunter's safety orange. It was a custom-built rifle, clearly old, with hand-tooled wooden furniture and modifications that looked like they'd been made in a garage workshop rather than a precision manufacturing facility. The barrel was scarred with use, the scope was an older model that had been discontinued decades ago, and the whole setup looked like something that belonged in a pawn shop, not a military competition. A group of young Marines gathered around, their comments just loud enough to be heard. "Did Grandpa get lost on the way to deer season?" One chuckled. Another added, "That thing belongs in a museum, not on a range with real weapons." Frank ignored them with the patience of someone who had nothing left to prove. He simply signed his registration form, noted his credentials: Vietnam veteran, former Marine Scout sniper, competitive long-range shooter for 40 years, and moved to the preparation area. But what happens next will silence every doubter in attendance, because sometimes the most unassuming package contains the most lethal capability. And what this old veteran is about to demonstrate will not only win the competition, but alert a general to a lesson the modern military desperately needs to learn. The competition progressed through the morning. Shooters with the latest technology, computer-assisted scopes, ballistic calculators, and rifles that could practically think for themselves took their turns. The scores were impressive. Several shooters hit targets at 3,000 meters, a feat that would have been considered impossible just a generation ago. The mood was confident, celebratory even. These were the best marksmen in the world, using the best equipment money could buy. Then Frank's turn came. He moved to the line slowly, his movements economical and precise despite his age. He was assigned the 4,000-meter target, the maximum distance, one that no competitor had successfully hit all day. The young Marines who had mocked him earlier positioned themselves to watch his inevitable failure. Frank settled into position without fanfare. He didn't use a ballistic computer or a weather station. Instead, he did something that made the observers exchange confused glances. He pulled out a small notebook, weathered and held together with duct tape, and consulted handwritten tables that he compiled over decades. He wet his finger and held it up to feel the wind. He watched the heat waves rising from the ground. He studied the flags placed at intervals downrange, reading their movement like an ancient language. Then he made his adjustments manually, using math he'd done in his head, experience accumulated over 50 years of shooting in every condition imaginable. If this story is moving you, if you believe that skill earned through decades of practice deserves respect regardless of how it looks, hit that like button right now. Your support helps us share stories about humility, true mastery, and never judging capability by appearance. Subscribe, because every week we bring you stories that prove technology is no substitute for hard-won experience and dedication to craft. He fired. The shot echoed across the valley. 4 full seconds passed, the time it took for the bullet to travel nearly 2.5 miles. Then the spotter's voice came over the radio, crackling with disbelief. Direct hit, center mass. The range fell silent. The Marines who had been laughing weren't laughing anymore. The high-tech shooter stared in shock. Frank had just made a shot that none of them, with all their advanced equipment, had accomplished. But he wasn't finished. "Request permission to demonstrate follow-up shots," Frank called to the range officer. Permission granted, he fired 4 more times in rapid succession. Each shot required new calculations as wind conditions shifted. 4 seconds between trigger pull and impact. 4 more direct hits on a target the size of a torso at 4,000 meters. The competition effectively ended there. Frank Morrison had not only won, he demonstrated a level of mastery that embarrassed every piece of expensive technology on the range. But more importantly, his performance had caught the attention of someone very significant. Major General William Santos had been observing from the command tower. He'd come to evaluate whether new equipment proposals were worth the multi-million-dollar price tags. What he'd just witnessed changed his entire perspective. Santos made his way down to the range, his 3 stars gleaming in the mountain sun. The crowds parted as he approached Frank, who was calmly cleaning his orange rifle. "Mr. Morrison," Santos began, his voice carrying authority but also genuine respect, "I need to understand what I just saw. You outperformed 30 of the military's best snipers, including several who hold records, using equipment that looks like it came from a garage sale." "How?" Frank looked up, meeting the general's eyes without intimidation. "Sir, with respect, that's exactly where some of it came from. This rifle was built by a gunsmith in Montana 40 years ago. The scope I bought used in 1982. The orange paint, that was my daughter's idea when I started competing in civilian long-range events. Said if I was going to embarrass younger shooters, I should at least be visible while doing it." Santos couldn't help but smile. "But the performance, the precision. We have computers that can't calculate what you just did in your head." Frank set down his cleaning rod. "General, I spent 2 tours in Vietnam making impossible shots because if I didn't, my brothers died. I've spent 50 years since then practicing, competing, learning every variable that affects a bullet's flight. I know what a 3-degree temperature change does at 2,000 meters. I can feel wind speed differences of 2 miles per hour. I've fired in rain, snow, heat, and cold. My rifle and I aren't separate things. We're one system, and I know every quirk, every tendency, every microscopic detail of how she performs." He paused, looking at the young Marines gathered around. "These kids have incredible technology, but they've been taught to depend on it. When it fails, when batteries die or computers crash or conditions exceed program parameters, they're lost. I'm not saying technology is bad. I'm saying it should enhance skill, not replace it." Santos nodded slowly, wheels turning in his tactical mind. "Would you be willing to teach? To help us develop training that combines both?" Frank smiled. "General, I'd be honored, but on one condition." "Name it." "I get to keep my orange rifle." "It's got sentimental value." The general laughed, a genuine sound that cut through military formality. "Deal." Over the following months, Frank became a legend in military sniper circles. He taught at Quantico, Fort Benning, and Camp Pendleton. He didn't just teach shooting. He taught observation, patience, adaptability, and the mental discipline required for true mastery. His students learned to use technology as a tool rather than a crutch, to trust their senses and experience alongside their equipment. The orange rifle became famous. Marines who had initially mocked it came to see it as a symbol of something important. That true capability doesn't require expensive packaging. That mastery is built through decades of dedication, and that dismissing someone based on appearance is a mistake that can be both humbling and educational. Frank never let the attention change him. He remained the humble veteran who just wanted to serve, to pass on knowledge earned through sacrifice and devotion to craft. When he finally passed away at 81, still teaching, still shooting, the Marine Corps retired his orange rifle to their museum at Quantico. It sits there now, a bright splash of color among the tactical blacks and greens, with a plaque that reads, "True precision comes not from the tool, but from the warrior who wields it." This story reminds us to never judge capability by appearance, to respect mastery regardless of how it presents itself, and to remember that the most valuable skills are often those earned through decades of dedication. Have you ever been underestimated because of how you looked or what you had? Have you witnessed someone prove doubters wrong through pure skill? Share your story in the comments. If this moved you, share it with someone who needs to remember that real excellence doesn't need expensive packaging. Subscribe for stories that celebrate true mastery, respect for experience, and the humility to learn from unexpected teachers. Remember, never judge the rifle by its paint, the book by its cover, or the warrior by their age. True capability reveals itself when it matters most. Until next time, stay humble and respect mastery wherever you find it.